It's showtime.
Hey, it's live. Hello, everybody. Good evening, and welcome to Disability Horizons TV. Tonight, we're talking humour. And with that, I've been told to say, hit the button, Zach.
No, I missed. Oh!
Now, of course, being professional, you have no idea how long it took us to rehearse how bad that was. It took ages.
And it went well, though.
It did go very well. Oh dear. Well, yes. Hello. Welcome to Disability Horizons Television. We still haven't got a name for this show, so we're just the whole channel. But the channel will soon be filling up with other things. We've got stuff to tell you about that later. But anyway, I'm Mick Scarlet, and I'm joined as usual by the wonderful Zach the Tech Richardson, who's meant to be in control of tech.
I'm meant to be in control, but I was looking at porn on the internet. So...
honestly, I was just typing in tractor, and then the next thing you know, it was all rude, and I don't know
what colour
why.
do you want it? 50 Shades of Grey, please.
And dear, oh dear. So, how has your week been so far, Zach?
I ran mentally low during the week.
I
ran lower than a snake's belly during the week. But I picked myself up, went shul yesterday, and then I got home and I got the air rifle out and took it out on a metal squirrel.
Oh, what on earth you were going to say to the air rifle out? Blew me brains out.
Yeah, just put it in. But it hasn't happened. I've got a pellet in there. It didn't work.
It's just round and round. There's nothing in there anyway, so it just sort of like empty tin can. Well, it's funny for me this week because yesterday I went to see a Gary Newman tribute band called 2 by Days. Now I'm an old Newmanoid from long ago, and while I was sitting there watching this wonderful band who are so much like Gary Newman was back then, it's just like being there, and I felt 15 again. It suddenly struck me that the day before was 41 years to the day that I last walked at Gary Newman's farewell gig at Wembley Arena. So I'm sitting there watching a band sound like the guy I was watching when I last stood up. And I had to keep looking down to make sure I was still sitting down. Because it was so good. It was like being 15 again. So
it's like one of those dreams. I have these dreams where I'm in my dream and I'm walking along and all of a sudden I go, oh, where's my wheelchair? Crap.
Do you know what? I don't dream of walking. I don't dream of wheelchairs. I float.
Of course you do.
Various heights.
You're Mick Scarlet. You walk across water.
Levitate. But it's weird because sometimes I'm at like standing height and I don't walk. I just kind of float. Or like in Superman, where he kind of
he does that thing where he 80s
comes up, 90s, mate. Comes up off the ground and just kind of levitates along. If anyone was watching the Avengers Civil War, no idea what the hell was going on in that episode.
Strange old Doctor Strange, is it?
Yeah. It's the Vision that floats. That was what it's like. So sometimes I'm floating at wheelchair height, sometimes I'm floating at standing height, but I never walk or wheel. Just always floating. It is the drugs. Anyway, we're not talking about that. That's another whole episode. Today,
the 1980s.
Clean living in the 1980s, mate. 1990s, I'm saying nothing. But anyway, it was an era. I was off my pickle for most of it, so let's just not talk about it.
Can't remember it, can't talk about it.
Got asked to write an autobiography once, couldn't do it, can't remember what I've done.
Mick, you've missed out the 90s. Yep.
Yeah, the only bit that matters, the bit where I was actually famous. All the rest of the 1980s, who the hell cares?
Was you famous?
2000s. I was famous, yeah. Wow. I used to be on telly. Yeah, people used to know my name. Anyway, right.
We're talking about humour.
We've done 5 minutes. That's good. We've only got some time left. Right, what we're going to talk about is humour today, aren't we? Funnies.
Yeah, we'll have a go.
And we start, and I think we wanted to be a bit lighter because it's been a bit dark for a few times.
Last week
and I thought, let's keep light. And I also think that this is for you viewers, right? We want to hear your jokes. We want to hear your favourite disabled jokes. Maybe point out some of the ones you don't like. Do you use dark humour? What kind of humour do you like? All that kind of stuff. Because otherwise it's going to be us waffling on about what we find
we
funny.
wouldn't manage that, would we?
And yeah, no. And we probably will get ourselves in more trouble again because, let's face it, our sense of humour can, on occasion, be a little bit... Yeah. What I thought we could start talking about is that get you through humour, the dark sense of humour that we develop. Because I know that you used to work in the emergency services, which is, let's face it,
I slept mostly.
Yeah, but we think we know about dark humour, but the emergency services kind of invented it, really, didn't
Well,
they?
it wasn't like local. It wasn't like your old local, we're protecting life and thing. It was the Ministry of Defence, and we were called out if somebody accidentally set light to something. And I think the only fire I went to in a building was the sanitary towel incinerator had got overloaded and smoked the building out. But we were there for, they just, we're going to set fire to this. And we're going to set fire to this that could go bang, and we're going to see what happens. That was our job. But yeah, I worked with a lot of military and ex-military, and I learnt my humour from them. I was sort of 18 up to 22. So yeah, I learnt humour there that has made me realise I get fired elsewhere in the rest of my life.
I must admit, anyone that follows Zach's Twitter feed, there are moments where you go, okay. Isn't it today? Isn't it your mother-in-law's birthday? And you put up a picture of Les Dawson and you together, me with my mother-in-law. Which it's humour, but it's definitely humour from the army. It's funny that actually because I used to hang around. There it is.
Me with the mother-in-law. They've got the hang of it now. It's taken many years. I've been with Donna 32 years, and I think it's only been the last 5 or 6 years where they've stopped getting really upset with me.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think I might get in trouble. So I'm avoiding it. It's very funny. I'm avoiding
I will say, Donna, I do show her my phone and go, can I post that? And I wait for it. Yeah, we've got to that stage.
I think also, I've never been liked by parents. Any of my past partners have their parents have really hated me, whereas Diane's parents actually really like me. So I'm making sure I don't. I'm always taking the mick out of myself. And do you know what? That's actually something that is true, isn't it? Is we do use a lot of dark humour about ourselves, and other people that aren't disabled don't get it.
And they
get offended on your behalf, even though you're saying it about yourself.
Yeah.
Or like you said, they try it, and you're like, "Yeah, no, I can say that. You can't say it." Do you think that is true? That you can that kind of idea of, or I can say it, but you can't. Thing.
Yeah, and within our partners, like Diane could probably joke about something with you, but somebody else could not dare try. I mean, my family. I mean, amount of times I've fallen in the bathroom and I hear my family laughing, and I'm like, yeah, you can ask if I'm all right in a minute.
We went to a party once, and it was actually a party by another wheelchair user that I knew, and their partner, and we were talking to someone, and the scene in French and Saunders where they do Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, and Dawn French goes, "Look what I can do with my fully working legs," and she starts dancing. Well, we were talking about it, and Diane went, "Yes, look what I can do with my fully working legs," and me and Diane pissed ourselves, and the whole room froze in abject horror, and they just went, "Oh," and it was like, "Oh, that poor boy, he's being abused by his wife."
I had it with my grandkids. I'm sat down and I'm like, I stood up because I can stand. I'm not going to do it. I fell over it. And I stood up and they went, "Oh, well done, Gargoyle. Well done. You're so clever." Piss off.
Oh, yeah. Mark says he doesn't like when people take the mickey out of themselves with disability. If someone can't make a joke about it, then we should. And see, it's funny that.
I tear myself apart. I'm awful.
Yeah, and I think
still, I'm not buying that product again.
I know what you mean, Mark. I know that there is this line, and sometimes other people cross it, but I kind of, and I know that I'm sure that Zek and me have crossed the line many times with humour about ourselves that we probably wouldn't get away with. But I don't know. I think that it comes because I know my dark humour came from. I was like a kid. I didn't get jokes, but I always thought when people bullied me, I always just was like, "That's a really crap piece of bullying. You can't walk." I know. So, or you can't walk very well. Clever that. So well done, bravo.
I was dancing.
Yes, you've observed things. Well done. That's next level bullying, I feel, please. But then I became a wheelchair user. In fact, let's face it, today I was sitting in Luton Dunstable Hospital about to be shipped to the National Hospital for Nervous Diseases because everyone thought I'd got cancer again. And I was put in a terminal ward. And trust me, if you want dark humour, a terminal ward when you're 15 is where you learn it. Because it's a grim old place. And the nurses kind of have to joke a lot to stay sane. So, and I think it's a natural response. Don't you? Kind of, I have to make a joke about it. I suppose part of it is you make
It's
a joke
that laugh
someone
or
else
cry for me. Laugh at it or cry about it type thing. And that is my humour. But, we're all so different. Some of us can really rip in and others, I don't know if that's upbringing or just life experiences. But, like you say, it depends who you've been around, etc., as to how you feel about that.
Now, Katie says she's crossed the line many times in humour about myself.
Oh, Katie.
And I don't believe that, Katie, because you are an angel. And I feel that you probably made a joke and other people went, ooh, and I bet it was very funny, but they just didn't get it because they haven't got a funny bone. That's what if I always tell a joke and people don't laugh, it's because I'm brilliant and they don't get it. And it's nothing to do with taste. What kind of humour do you like, Zek?
What kind? I mean, I grew up, like you, the humour of our days would be now seen as very, very wrong. And but we know as sensible human beings that there's certain things you don't joke about. Jim Davison and Roy Chubby Brown and all those that we grew up with. Even Monty Python. I remember going to see the Life of Brian with all the Christians outside protesting because they were so upset about the film.
Which I never understood.
I've got that.
I never understood why they were upset because it wasn't about Jesus. It was about a bloke called Brian. Jesus was in
Messiah.
Jesus was in it.
He was across the road.
He was Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah.
It was done and he cured people without a by your leave, which is something we'll talk about, I think, in a bit. But so I never got that. But yeah, no.
Well, they did pull one scene. They were going to have a Jew who looked like Hitler in it.
Oh,
and they pulled that scene.
I think they probably should have done, yes. It's going a tad far.
But yeah, it's that kind of zany humour that I grew up on. It. Some of it very dark. I mean, love thy neighbour. Good Lord. And, all of that. I showed my daughters an episode of that. I think it was the first episode of Love Thy Neighbour. And basically, the white guy has said the black guy's moved in. He goes, can't have that. And I'm not going to say the word next door.
Yep.
It'll rape my wife. And that was humour back in the 70s.
Do you know what? It's because I think that because Alf Garnett was and a little bit
satire,
and a little bit like Al Murray and the pub landlord.
Yeah, pub landlord.
It's sort of that Alf Garnett was Jewish, so he was creating this ridiculous character to hold a mirror up to the ridiculousness of racism or whatever. But sometimes you find that actually people believe what they say. Because I grew up in Luton, quite a town of quite a lot of racism, and loads of people I knew thought that it was almost like, oh, good old Alf Garnett, he's on our side, and it was like, no, he's actually saying you're a bunch of idiots. And I think sometimes that happens with disability, that you get comedy done that's meant to be funny about us, and it's not, because it kind of.
I mean, how do you feel about the old classic? Oh, my bro's go David Walliams and that with the wheelchair. When he gets up and walks away.
I couldn't ever get what that was about.
No,
because he was like in a chair, and he was and then he would get up. So he was a faker. So he wasn't disabled. He was not disabled.
Faking disability, wasn't he?
So actually, it was almost a joke on the benefit cheat that he was like.
It was funny the first time, but then you kind of knew it was going to happen again, didn't you?
What was? Do you know what? Right now, this is absolutely gospel true. I was in Morrison's in Camden, right, one day buying vegetables. Now, my wife has a habit of walking off when we're in shops because she hates shopping. So she just wanders. And I'm talking to her, and I regularly talk to her and discover she's gone because she just walks off, right? So, I mean, I know I'm very boring. Can you imagine being married to this? It's enough to drive me mad. So anyway, she wandered off, and we were buying onions and it was out of my reach. So I said, joking, I want that one, right? And this bloke reached over and passed me it. And I genuinely went, you are joking, aren't you? And then but he realized what he'd done. And it was like, and I found, I went, I was joking and it went all wrong. But so it's funny that actually it's actually realer than you think, that you can do that and people will pass you.
Yeah, Mark says, some people dislike comedy because it is too close to comfort, and I guess that's why some people do like it. It's, comedy will always split people, and I don't mind comedy splitting people until we move to the subject of where it is purposely directed for the, the likes of Jimmy Carr, who sometimes goes a little.
Yeah, now that's because I always think it's funny because I actually I had to look his name up. And so I wrote in Scottish offensive comedian, and Frankie Boyle came up straight away. Now I quite like a lot of his humour, but he's done stuff about disability that kind of was a bit, and he's not done jokes about me as a wheelchair user, and that's where I think the thing starts. Is if he laughs at you, like wheelchair users or whatever, then you go, right, it's up to me to decide. But when he picks on another impairment group,
he had one, didn't he, about the Paralympics, and he said, I've got a joke. I don't know if it's going to offend disabled people, but I haven't had anyone disabled get up and walk out yet. And it was like, no.
See, do you know what? Years ago, I went on a Kilroy. That's how long ago it was, about this subject.
Robert
Kilroy, yeah, I know. He screwed his career up with politics. Anyway, but that gave us Brexit in reality, really didn't. And Farage, what a lovely chap. We must find him and thank him. Anyway, and it was about this subject, taste in humour and another. And someone did a joke very similar to that, and I started laughing. And he went, you laughed, as if I done. And I said, well, you can laugh at something and it still not be tasteful and it not be right. You can't help. It's a bit like when you bang yourself and you go ow, or it's a reaction. And I think people don't appreciate sometimes that you laugh, like, without being funny, the Will Smith slappy episode where the joke was told, he laughed and then got aggressive, and everyone's like, well, he laughed because he was in an environment where everyone's meant to laugh.
Yeah, and it wasn't a comfortable laugh.
Yeah, it was like, ha ha ha, well, that's so funny.
Yeah, Mark's just put that exact thing on. Yeah. We've just seen it come up as a comment.
That's it. And
have you seen the wheelchair photo of me at the bottom of the decking steps, laid splat out with my wheelchair on top of me? Because I thought it was fun. I said to my daughter, I'll put the wheelchair on top, take a photo. And people were like, oh my God, are you okay? And I'm like, no, my family didn't see me there and get the camera out.
Now, Gavin, of course, has talked about the old ex-leper joke, and that's, I think we do have to touch upon, because
that is one of the best fun.
I think that was very clever, and I think that was probably ahead of its time. And I also don't think that anyone in Monty Python knew that they were confronting the social model compared to the medical model and the religious model of disability, because it's genius. I'll make a living out of this. If I got cured tomorrow, what would I do for a living?
Yeah, there he comes along. Cures Mick without a bile.
I'm a professional cripple. I'd have to go and get a proper job. What the hell would I do?
Make you just a little bit disabled on the week?
I don't want to be paralysed, but couldn't I have a slightly dodgy foot on Wednesday?
We're going to get in trouble. This was the end of the HTV.
See, no one's told us. I quite like Mark's.
There's Avril. It was Avril that called you Zippy.
Going to IKEA and asking, "Have you got any spare legs?" And saying, "I meant the table, not for me." I like that. Ah, dear.
Oh dear.
Ah, dear.
And I guess it depends also where your mental state is. Times when I will laugh a lot at something that's really funny, but if I was having a rough time mentally, it could hit me hard, and it may not be as vicious.
Yes,
It depends on
you
our
know what?
state of mind.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, because I think a lot of comedians obviously push, like that's what comedy's about, pushing in some way, and they're going to get it wrong. But I think that sometimes they push in directions at people who don't have a voice to push back. And I think that's why disability has been such a dodgy one. We've now got disabled comedians coming up, getting, I mean, I love Francesca Martinez. I think she's brilliant. And there's that generation, the newer generation coming up, that are really, pushing those boundaries. And some of it I think misses. Some of it I think is quite funny. I think they're quite aiming for a mainstream audience. So, I mean, like we've already said, our humour is a little bit left field. So sometimes it's a bit kind of, why are you trying to be like Michael McIntyre? But
that's humour I love. It's nothing to do with disability, but that sketch he does about people with names. Sarah with the name Sarah. Have you seen it?
Yes, no, he's not really. See, I freely admit, I admit that one of the things I first found hilarious, other than Python, was of course Spike Milligan. And if you watch old Spike Milligan back, it kind of doesn't only skirt offensive, it dives in with both feet and puts a Nazi helmet on. But it was just so bizarre.
I've got one of his books, The Little Pot Boiler. Brilliant.
You watched it. Comedy shows, they're just like, what,
but that was, we had comedians like that. Michael Benteen, Spotty Time.
I used to love, as a kid, I used to just sit there transfixed how he'd make the footprints appear in the sand, and you'd be like, how did you do that? And I would spend hours trying to recreate.
Well, you couldn't do that because you can't walk.
No, I could walk with one leg. I had one leg back then. I had to hop.
And I said to Jesus, why was it then that I only saw one footprint in the sand? He said, because you're a cripple, my son. And this is me and Mick. This is us to a T, I mean,
but
I
really like things like the Mighty Boosh, and
that
I loved the Mighty Boosh. I loved. Did you used to watch Monkey Dust on BBC Three, the animated series? That was just so dark. It was really dark. Having said that, when I'm in pain, comedy is my saviour, and I have a collection of the worst kind of rubbish you've ever seen. Steve Martin, the jerk, is without shadow of a doubt one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And yet, what is it about? It's about a guy with learning difficulties. But I just think it's great. And Corky Romano.
I've never seen that. No,
it's rubbish. It's it's one of the rubbishiest films you've ever seen. But when you're in pain, you don't need to think. I tried to watch Monkey Dust. I tried to watch The Mighty Boosh. I even tried to watch Monty Python. And
I watch Flushed Away. Whenever I'm in loads of pain, I put Flushed Away on.
Millicent Bystander.
Oh yeah, my wife hates that. We watch a police program, and they go, and an innocent bystander, and she goes, "Shut up." Or the IT crowd. I watch the IT crowd again. I love Flushed Away.
Now that program, that scene where he pretends to be disabled because he's been found in the disabled toilet. Someone stop!
I always use that to my family. If they go, "Oh, can you do it?" And I go, "I'm disabled." How are you disabled? Leg disabled.
And then he gets put on that bus. It's a gay disabled out.
And yet that may offend some people, mightn't it? That could really offend.
It's not fair. I wished I'd have been cast in that. I'd have loved to have been on that bus. I've got a quite tight t-shirt on. I've been quite cool. Do you know what? It's funny. Gavin has said about the League of Gentlemen's joke about have you seen it where you've got a blind guy sitting on a bench and this other character turns up and he basically says all the things you're ever meant to say to a blind, you're not meant to say to a blind person, one after another. And it's just, and I used to use it in my equality training as an example of because all the way through this whole scene, it's about 10 minutes long. It's great. And it's just, awful, but it's not meant with malice. The guy panics and just starts saying the wrong thing, and then
It gets worse and worse.
and it just I mean, there's a bit in it where he goes, you never know, they do amazing things now. I was watching a Tales of the Unexpected the other day, and there was this eye with in a glass in a jar with a brain, and you never know, that could be you one day. And it's how often do we get that stuff? It was genius. But then I got told by loads of my clients that I had to take it out because it was too offensive.
Oh, okay.
I just thought, you got to see it. It is brilliant. Gavin is absolutely right. It is brilliant. And all the way through, the blind guy's just trying to get away, going, "Oh no, not another one." And in the end, he walks off. And the other guy's left all on his own. And he's like, "Oh, was it something I said?" And it's just, and that I think was written by someone that knows someone disabled. Do you know what I mean? I think whoever wrote that knew someone.
Yeah.
Now, who watches Family Guy? Joe Swanson, don't you?
No.
Oh, see, I also think that someone.
There's the guy in the wheelchair. I know that. My daughter's pointed it out because, of course, I must know him.
No. Obviously, yeah. I've actually got one over there, but can I point the camera? Let's just see. You won't be able to see him anyway, but he's up there somewhere. I might go and get him in a minute. That's ruined the camera. Oh dear, it's all gone pear-shaped. Anyway, that's better. I'm still in the right place. I really like that. It pushes the humour. Sometimes I'm like, that wasn't funny. That wasn't funny. Like how his wife occasionally just suddenly decides she wants to leave him because he can't have sex. And I'm like, boring. But a lot of the times, the little jokes are funny. There's one when they're in a vat of beer and they're all sitting in the beer drinking it, and Joe's legs keep floating up. And it's true. If you go swimming and you're not careful, your legs float up and you flip over. And it's just like, that's genius. But of course, you haven't seen it, so we can't talk about it.
No, I've kind of ruined that. I do apologise. I wasn't warned.
I would have watched it if I'd known.
Yeah.
So what jokes have you seen on telly that really made you go, no, that's too much?
You're putting my foggy brain on the spot now because there's probably loads, and I'm going, I don't
I
know.
agree.
And somebody would probably find that really funny.
I think we need to point out that we don't do any research for this show. Even though we suggested this over 2 weeks ago, and we could have spent ages uploading videos that Zach could have played and we could have talked about them. We haven't.
That's a good idea.
We didn't do any of that. So instead, we're talking about stuff. Can we stop? Can we do this next week? Can we do it next time? Not next time, because next time something else is happening. But the time after that, we'll come back to it and we'll do it professionally.
We'll show you some clips and get in trouble for showing them.
Yeah, we'll get copyright trouble. But is there anything that you? I mean, is there anything you just went, no, that's too much?
I don't know. There's just some jokes that I find, the stupid old jokes that you've heard before that I probably heard as a kid, like, boiling vegetables and their wheelchairs and stuff and all that sort of, those stupid. If you're gonna tell me a disabled joke, it's got to, you got to have a bit of intelligence behind it. Because the same old boring, you're disabled shit is just offensive, and it's all you can come up with. It's probably done for the sake of being offensive, but I'm sorry, I was only joking.
Yeah,
like
Mark just...
well, at least you get you're lucky, you get a good parking spot, don't you?
Now that is something else. That thing that people say things to you when they go, oh shit, I've got to say something, brain kick out of gear. What shall I say? And whatever they say, vroom. Have you got a driving license for that?
Lucky you, you've got a seat.
You always get a seat, don't you? All that. You'd always be all right for a parking space. And I don't know. And it's funny because I still, when I go wheeling around places I don't know with people I don't know, go vroom. Especially when there's kids around, because I think it's funny. And then I think I'm doing that because I'm preempting someone saying it. But then I'm probably making them say it to the next person who they meet in a chair.
Yeah, Gavin's hit that on the head there. This is very, very serious. The jokes, social media jokes, they're not funny.
See, I don't even think about the things that people say on social media as funny. as jokes, because they're just, I mean, I don't think anyone on social media goes on social media to go, I'm just going to say something witty, ha ha ha. They're going, I'm going to be a complete shithead, because they're trolls, and I think that I think what they ought to do is say it to his face in a room. I think that'd be quite a thing to watch. And now Harvey Price is going to be taken the piss out of by a short bloke with glasses from a small town somewhere in Bedfordshire, a keyboard warrior. And we're going to see what Harvey Price does to his face. And that'd be great. Because, I think that is something, is when they take the mick out of me, but it's like, I don't know if the joke, say, like saying to someone that's visually impaired, see you later, ha ha ha, is funny or not. Because I'm not visually impaired. So I can't, I just go, yeah, I'm staying out of that. But I don't think it's funny. But in that situation, when you're talking about someone that hasn't got the skills to say, excuse me, I think you'll find that's offensive, then I think you're just punching low. But I think that's the thing about a thing like Jimmy Carr. I don't think there's kind of comedy. And
he knows it's offensive because he warns people.
There's edgy comedy, and then there's just punching low. There's like
jokes where people are joking about disabled people. It's not even with disabled people. It's just basically the stupid mocking school playgrounds type of crap that these grown men can't get out of.
It's funny. The first joke I heard in the playground, and I thought, I don't get that. That's not funny. Was, oh no, there's been a terrible crash and the special school bus was involved. It took over an hour to get the bus out the wreckage. And the joke was that the kids in chairs were the wreckage. And I remember going, so what you're saying is, and everyone was falling around, and I just remember sitting there thinking, so you're saying I'm wreckage, are you? Luckily, I did have a metal leg, so I kicked everybody for laughing. And that, of course, I think is the best solution. But let's have a look where we got. Yes, now Ricky. Yes, well done, new Facebook user Ricky Gervais. Don't get it. I've never got. I don't get.
I've never liked him. The only time I liked him is when he stood up for like the animal rights type thing about hunting. Then I thought, okay, you're kind of maybe a bit decent.
Because he did the stuff in The Office, and he had Julie in, and he had Francesca in, and he kind of was meant to be, he's a bit of a dick, and he's taking the piss and all that, and it was a bit funny. But Derek, I don't get.
No,
I don't get this. I'm playing someone a bit strange, and it's funny.
Look at what I do.
Yeah, life's too short with Warwick, and like it was great to see a comedian, like a disabled comedian front and center, but a lot of it was look, he's short. It's like, I don't know. What do you think about disabled comedians, especially the new ones?
I like Rosie.
Yeah,
I like Rosie. She's really good. I haven't seen. I mean, Lost Voice guy. I mean, that was very good. I love the little lad. I'm not keen on Britain's Got Talent, but the little lad, was his name Jack?
Oh yes, the guy with the
little kid with the walker.
Yeah, you do know now he's a fully grown adult, so he's not little anymore.
So, yeah.
But I've actually done some work with him, and he's like a fully.
But it's not little Jack anymore.
No, he's great big bloke, great big.
He's
Jack
gone off brand, hasn't he? He's gone off brand.
Yeah, that's it. It's
not so cute. If he came on there, Simon would go.
Always a problem, you see, when you're disabled and a kid, you're cute. Then you grow up and people don't like you so much. So.
But yeah, I do like that, and I think it's okay for them to tell jokes and for people to laugh, because it is, the old stand-up routine joke. Unfortunately, always a stand-up comedian. I think that one always falls foul, though.
Do you know what? It's funny because I have done some stand-up, and I and I avoided going on and going, I'm a stand-up comedian. No, I'm not. I'm a I was just, because I'd seen about 3 other wheelchair users come on with that joke, and I thought, no. So instead I talked about erections, as you do. But anyway.
That goes down.
Or in my case, not exactly down. Now, Katie was talking about Tim in Jerk. Now, Katie loved Jerk. I just didn't.
I haven't seen it again.
It was sort of weird. And one of the things I think that happens a lot is that there's this kind of humour about disability where disabled people are kind of almost taking the piss out of themselves. And
Right.
I remember seeing things like a lot of the really earlier sort of groundbreaking black humour, and they never really took the mickey out of themselves. They took the mickey out of everybody else and placed themselves at the centre of a world gone mad run by white people and kind of went, we're saying they're all really weird. And I really like that. And I wish that more of our humour was that rather than sort of and there's a lot of this where you're kind of going, I'm playing on being disabled to benefit me. And it sort of plays into that benefit scrounger idea. Do you know what I mean? The idea that, well, I want to get to the front of the queue, so
Yeah.
my limp gets worse. And I'm like, we don't do that. It's a myth, So I don't know, but I think.
what do you think of people like Jimmy Carr? So he goes, I give you a warning. I'm going to see how far I can go. This could be my. He gives the warning and he pushes too far.
No, I don't agree. The thing is, right, it's all right going, oh yeah, comedy's edgy, blah 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 blah. If you say, for example, you can't get in your car and go, I'm drunk, I'm gonna drive, and then that's your
Exactly,
warning,
yeah.
and then drive down the pavement and go, well, I told him. That's not. You can't get your phone in the House of Commons, turn to the person next to you and go, I'm going to watch some porn now and get away with it, right? So I don't think you can say this is going to be offensive. If you know it, then how can you rewrite it to make it funny and not offensive? And if you can't, don't. If you can't, write it and give it to Rosie or loads of these new comedians coming up, and if they'll go, oh, actually, I can work with this, I can write something out of this, because comedians don't write all their own stuff, other people help them too.
Yeah.
So that's my idea. But I almost think, do you know what? It's funny. This is what I was going to ask you about. I remember seeing a Billy Connolly sketch that's meant to be about. He's making a joke about what Glaswegians are like, and it revolves around, and these are his words, a wee dwarf. And basically, he starts off saying this dwarf got on. Now, can I say dwarf? And then there's a whole skit about what else is she? He's a dwarf. Do you know what I mean? And I found that, and I was like, that was funny when it happened, but now it's a bit kind of, here we go.
So that's it. Jokes do change over time, don't they? As we learn.
Then he goes. This little girl goes up to the wee dwarf and says, would you like my seat? And she goes, oh, I see, it's because I'm short and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And the joke is that the short person of short stature is a bit of a grumpy old sod. And the Glaswegian woman that gets off the bus gives her a big old shouting at, and at the end says something about Snow White.
You're
right?
grumpy.
And I watched it and I thought, do you know what? That's really weird, because I'm sure I saw that when it happened, because it was quite a long while ago. It was probably in the 80s, and thought it was funny. And all the way through, I could feel my toes curling, and sort
car
of
crash moment.
Yeah, but what was funny about it was he was picking the language thing as a joke. And I think people do that now, don't you? Where they go, oh, can I cook? Are they wheelchair bound? I don't know. Oh, I don't know. Oh, all this language stuff.
Have I got news for you? Was a bit cringy. Did you watch the last episode? They had
I did.
Andy on there, the comedy writer.
Yeah.
Who's a short guy. And they were taking the piss out of Rishi Sunak for being short. And he turned around and he went, I didn't know he was short. And they didn't click what he was saying. But it was so awkward because they're taking the piss out of someone for being short to Andy. I can't remember his name.
Ironically, he doesn't think of himself as disabled. He doesn't call himself disabled. So, because I wrote to him. He went, no, I'm not disabled. I was like, oh, okay. I thought you were. Sorry, mate. I thought you were. So
who is disabled? I mean, Michael McIntyre has a disability, but he doesn't call himself. He walked on his toes, didn't he? All the time. And he did that. He sat down on the edge of the stage and said, look, I've had, inserts put in my shoes so I walk properly. But the result is I've got huge calves. And he rolled up his trouser legs to show people and then couldn't get them back down. His calves are bloody. He's like a bodybuilder. And so an audience member had to come and get his trousers back over. So he has a disability but doesn't refer to himself as disabled.
I'm trying
He
to look
does
at
now. He's claiming Pip.
yeah, that's the. I think that's the thing, is that there is that sort of kind of joke, that kind of humour about, oh, what can I get? And I mean, isn't it Lost Voice Go that goes, I'm only in it for the blue badge? I don't know. I can't explain it.
There's loads of T-shirts like that now. I'm only in it for the parking. And I saw one the other day, a guy post who actually has got Parkinson's, and it's a T-shirt, and it says, "Have I got Parkinson's?" And there was 2 boxes, yes and no, and there was just a scribble over it. And he was laughing at himself. He'd seen it, and so that was funny because it's him that posted it. Yeah, if it had been from someone else,
I think, I suppose,
someone who didn't have Parkinson's wore that would be offensive. It's so complicated, isn't it, as to what's humour? And I think if you can't get on the right side of it, and you're not sure if you're going to be on the right side,
don't do it.
Don't do it.
Yeah. I entirely agree. I saw Shan Akbar on Thursday. He's a deaf comedian. He built himself, or his website builds himself, as the Bangladeshi Pakistani version of Michael McIntyre. He's very funny, and he does a lot of jokes about looking like. See, this is the problem. I can never remember anyone's name. The other Asian comedian with a beard who does a lot of telly. See, we're both. You've got his fuzzy brain and my fuzzy brain. We've had it. But anyway, he also. See, you remembered his name, but you can't remember it, can you? So we're useless. Anyway, we'll forget that bit. Let's take that bit out.
When we redo the show, we'll tell you.
We'll cut that bit out in the edit. But he also does a lot of jokes about disability because he's deaf. But what's funny is he does jokes about being deaf, but refer to that, obviously show he's not very in the community. And he's sort of going, well, no one comes up to a wheelchair, because apparently he does this joke about sort of basically saying, someone comes up to him and says, have you tried hearing harder? Have you tried listening? And sort of no one says that to someone in a wheelchair, and it's like, no, they really do. Have you not tried thinking, not tried wanting it, and all this kind of stuff? And it's sort of weird that I think there's a huge gap, and I know there's a lot of good stuff coming up soon. I know Rosie Jones has got a couple of series coming up because I'm watching the crewing up for the shows.
Oh, right.
I know that Jamie Hale has got a kind of dark.
I don't know Jamie Hale.
I've worked with Jamie. Jamie's brilliant. Well,
Rosie's been in Casualty, isn't she? She was brilliant.
Yeah, I know. Well, and don't forget, of course, one of the first disabled people you would have seen in a well-known TV comedy would have been Mick Scarlet, who was in
2.4 Children.
2.4 Children.
Oh, that was a show, wasn't it?
Josh, the boy racer, who challenged the dad to a race. And I spent a whole night wheeling around Sports Centre in the freezing cold, faking not completely and utterly thrashing a man who'd never sat in a wheelchair before. So we had really filmed like about that much distance at a time.
Was it Malcolm in the Middle? Was it? Was it where the dad gets so irate? I think he's been abused or attacked, and so he goes out to pick on someone to prove his hard, and he gets this guy, come on, get out the car, and the guy gets his wheelchair out the car, and he's like.
To leave you with a funny story, I once was, in fact, it was on the way to the Kilroy about humour and disability, actually. And we were driving in this big cab, and this taxi cut us up. Right? Went down the side of the car, there was all shouting. And the cab driver got out and went, give us your number, and we'll swap details and we'll get it all sorted out. And I opened the door. Now I'm in all my punk, scary leather studs, Billy Idol hair, the lot. And I just lean out the door and I go, look, give him your effing number or I'll be out of this car, and you don't want that. And the bloke went, oh, sorry. And then we got in the car and we absolutely fell about laughing because my chair was in the boot. So for me to get out of the car, I'd have had to crawl around the back, put the chair together. Right, mate, come on. Ah, dear. But there we go. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't think we quite covered it all, but it'll do.
Yeah, no, I mean, the good thing is, I think what we can do is we can return to this subject another day, and we will actually do some research. I want you, dear viewer, as you leave, you've got the comments, carry on commenting. Tell us your stories that you like. Show us
your best and your worst jokes.
Your best, your worst. The things that really upset you. The thing that, it's all there on YouTube. Give us a link and then we'll come back to this in a few months' time, and we'll do a proper show where we'll go, well, someone said this. What do you think of that? Someone did mention see no evil, hear no evil. And I have to admit that is in my pain collection for films, because while it is continuously and utterly wrong from the moment it starts, it's just too funny to watch.
I had a funny incident this week. It wasn't a joke at me, but we had a racist leaflet through our door, as did a lot of people. And so I complained about it on Twitter. Look at this stupid people. And I said, I'd rather have immigrants in this area than the people that post this racist crap. And this bloke with a really Jewish name posted, oh, look, here's Zek saying who doesn't want us living in his area. Could you imagine if an ethnic Englishman said that? And I'm like, hey? You really
and I replied, did I not?
Yeah.
He does not know you, does he, Zek?
I'm not an ethnic Englishman. So I went on and I said to my rabbi online, I said, the conversion course has worked. He said, why? I said, I've been told I'm not an ethnic Englishman anymore. And they all said, Mazel Tov.
Oh dear. Life is weird. And today has been a fairly professional show. It's kind of had a middle and a journey and an end, and we haven't ruined anything, and we've not said anything too offensive.
But next time on the 15th could be even better.
Brilliant.
We won't make a mistake.
Because we ain't going to be here. No. It's going to be Lucy and Alice from the Labelled podcast are going to take over. And we get a holiday, which is handy because it's my brother's 54th birthday on the day before. So I expect.
I will still be in the background starting it.
Oh, you're going to magic it?
Stopping it. Well, I've got to magic it, yeah, because it's like the logins. That's the problem with this setup here. But yes, I will get them all set up online, and they're going to hijack. And I don't know the topic yet, but I'm sure it's going to be brilliant. They're very good.
They'll be great. They are wonderful and far more professional than us. They will do research. They will know what to talk about. It'll be great, and then end on time. And don't forget, folks, we are lining up guests. It's not always just going to be us two talking.
Yeah, Katie says, I'll talk to you, Zach, about my debut. We've invited Katie on. She didn't feel like last week with the energy.
No, and this week's a bit, although I wonder, I did say, did she want to do this week? But I didn't hear anything back because I think it's kind of, but I think I'd quite like to do one more.
Go on, do one.
Do one. A subjective, and I'd love to get you, dear viewers, on to give us your point of view and tell us what you want to talk about.
And you don't have to come for a whole show. What we can do is we can line you up down there in the green room, and then we can pop you in by the magic of
pop in
StreamYard and say,
I want to talk about this.
Bob from Gloucester, who's got a dodgy arm, and he's going to come in and talk about
And it could be something we don't know anything about. That would be nice, like sport. Come and tell us why you like sport, because we don't get it. Things like that. Yes.
All we know about sport is that Mick really wants the Paralympics to go fully bionic.
I do. We were talking about this just before we go. We were talking about this, weren't we, Zach? But I interviewed a guy who makes bionic hands, and he was saying the technology is moving at such a rate that within the next 20, 30 years, the Paralympics will be the ones to watch, because you'll have bionic eyes that can see for miles, bionic legs that can run like Steve Austin.
And he's got the new high jump record of 52 feet. And
anyone that ever read Judge Dredd will know about the Moon Olympics, where you had to be under 90-something% bionic to be able to be classed as human. And that's all I'm looking forward to.
I never did get the bionic man, because he only had one bionic leg, and yet he ran so
fast. He had two bionic legs, one bionic arm, and a bionic eye. And the bionic woman had two bionic legs, one bionic arm, and a bionic ear. So she'd go, and he'd go,
we can rebuild him.
And then he'd lift stuff up. What I always thought was funny was that he'd run with his bionic legs and he'd stop. Now, we all know that inertia means basically he'd stop and then his body would shoot off his legs because he'd need to slow down.
Was it his arms then when he used to bend things? Is that what I'm thinking? He only had one arm.
He only had one arm. He only had one bionic arm. So he'd go, and you'd go, well, what you mean? Oh, sugar, I've torn on my
That's the one. Only one arm.
He should have been kicking things more. That's what I think. The bionic kicker. Kick people in the nuts. That's how you stop the bad.
I think the A-team should have come along and reconfigured him. Anyway, we're getting way off subject, and this is the problem with our boys' humour.
I'm going off to a meal now, and because it's my friend's birthday. So
lucky you. My wife went out for my mother-in-law's birthday and sent via Deliveroo. I got a quarter pounder delivered to the door, and I'm like, oh, thanks.
Well, you stayed here to do this. You're an angel.
I did.
Yes. And with that, dear viewer,
we're going to go now, and you can all talk about us because our humour is so wrong.
oh,
Say, did you see that DHTV? And they go, of course
it was awful. It was awful. It was the least funny thing we've seen on television for years. Anyway, it's not even on television. That's why.
No.
Have a great bank holiday Monday. Don't forget
Is it bank holiday?
It is. You don't have to go to work. And I remember being. I remember being on the dollar going like, oh, bank holiday. Yeah. Although actually there used to be a festival in Luton on the bank holiday, so it used to be great. We'd go and get drunk, all the punks hang around in the town.
You're
so
right.
yeah. Anyway, so have fun. Enjoy yourselves.
Goodbye.
We won't see you next time. It'll be the wonderful Lucy and Alice from Labelled. But the time after that, there's no escape. We'll be back whenever that might be, because that's too far ahead for me to think.
15
so with that,
plus 14, 29. Is that right?
Nearly June. It'll be summer.
Oh, it'll only be 5 degrees by then. Goodbye.
See you, folks, and go out and have